The massive space station called Omega-7 floated in the dark void between three star systems. Thousands of alien ships came and went every day, carrying goods from one world to another. The station was home to over 50 different alien species, all doing business under the watchful eye of the Zephyrian Empire. Captain Alex Turner stood at the docking bay window of his cargo ship, Phoenix Dawn, watching the busy traffic around the station. He was one of the few humans left in this part of the galaxy, though most people thought his kind had died out long ago. The Empire had made sure everyone believed that story. Alex was negotiating with a tall blue alien when the station's warning. Sirens started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere as the station's defense systems came online. All the aliens in the trading hall started talking at once, their voices mixing into a confused buzz of different languages. Lieutenant Katie Marshall ran to the big observation window that looked out into space. She worked security for the station and had seen many strange things in her 5 years here. But what she saw now made her heart race. A ship unlike anything in the galactic database was moving slowly toward the station. It was huge, maybe twice the size of the biggest Zephyrian warship, but it moved without making any sound or energy signature that her scanners could detect. The ship was long and sleek, painted in dark colors that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange patterns covered its hull, geometric designs that hurt to look at for too long. No running lights blinked on its surface. No identification signals came from its communication arrays. It was like a ghost ship, silent and mysterious. Commander Jake Phillips tried again and again to contact the unknown vessel. He spoke in the common galactic language, then in Zephyrian, then in the old Earth tongue that almost nobody used anymore. The ship gave no response. It just kept moving closer to the station with steady, deliberate purpose. Dr. Lisa Warren checked her instruments 3 times to make sure they were working right. The energy readings coming from the mystery ship were impossible. Her scanners showed power levels that should have made the vessel glow like a small star, but somehow all that energy was contained perfectly within the hull. The ship's engines produced no heat signature, no radiation, nothing that should be possible with known technology. Word spread quickly through the station. Merchants stopped their trading to stare out windows. Security teams rushed to their posts. Even the normally calm Andromedans seemed nervous as they watched the approaching vessel. In the station's cantina, conversations died down to whispers as everyone wondered what this strange ship wanted. The vessel finally stopped about 1 kilometer away from the station. It just hung there in space, doing nothing. No weapons appeared on its hull. No shuttles launched from its bays. It simply waited, as if studying everything around it with invisible eyes. Captain Rick Bennett hid in the lower maintenance tunnels of the station, where few people ever went. He had been living in the shadows for 20 years, ever since he escaped from a Zephyrian prison camp. Rick had once been an officer in the Earth Defense Force, back when Earth still existed. Looking at the mystery ship through a small porthole, he felt something cold settle in his stomach. The hull design, the way it moved, even the geometric patterns on its surface, they all reminded him of classified human designs he had seen in military files decades ago. But that was impossible. Everyone knew humans were extinct. The Zephyrian Empire had made sure of that during the Great Purge 200 years ago. Earth was nothing but dead rock now, and any humans who escaped had died out in the cold space between stars. At least, that was what everyone believed. The mystery ship's hull began to change as Rick watched. Panels slid open along its sides, revealing what looked like weapon ports. But these were not like any weapons he had ever seen. They seemed to fold out from impossible angles, as if the ship's hull could bend reality itself. The technology was clearly far beyond anything the Empire possessed, far beyond anything anyone in the galaxy had seen before. Station Commander Phillips made one final attempt to contact the vessel. This time he used every frequency and every language in the Galactic Communication Database. The response that came back made everyone on the station freeze in shock. It was in perfect clear English, the ancient language of extinct Earth. The voice was calm and human, speaking words that would change everything. The speaker sounded young but carried an authority that made veteran space officers stand at attention. When the transmission ended, silence filled the station like a heavy blanket. The impossible had just become real, and nobody knew what would happen next. 3 hours after the mystery ship arrived, the space around Omega-7 filled with Zephyrian warships. Admiral Corex commanded the Imperial battle group from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist. The Admiral was known throughout the galaxy for his cruelty and his hatred of anything that challenged Imperial authority. The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack formation around the unknown vessel. 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and the flagship took positions that would allow them to destroy any enemy with overwhelming firepower. This was how the Empire dealt with problems, with massive shows of force that left no room for negotiation. Admiral. Corex opened a communication channel that broadcast to both the mystery ship and everyone on the station. His voice was cold and threatening as he spoke in the Imperial language. He demanded that the unknown vessel surrender immediately for inspection and questioning. Any resistance would be met with total destruction. Captain Rick Bennett listened to the transmission from his hiding place and felt fear creep up his spine. He knew what Zephyrian inspections meant. They would board the ship, kill anyone they found, and then destroy the vessel anyway. The Empire never let challenges to their power go unpunished, no matter how small. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the destroyer Sharp Edge, watching the standoff develop. She had been forced to serve the Empire after. Her homeworld was conquered, but she hated every moment of it. Amy had seen too many innocent ships destroyed by Imperial forces. Too many lives ended because someone was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The mystery ship responded to Admiral Corex's demands, but not with words. Instead, panels along. Its hull opened wider, revealing weapon systems that seemed to appear from nowhere. The technology was impossible to understand. The weapons seemed to exist in folded space, occupying areas that should have been solid hull material. Admiral Corex laughed when he saw the weapons. One ship against an entire battle group was suicide, no matter what strange technology it carried. He had destroyed rebel fleets and conquered whole star systems. This single vessel, no matter how advanced, would be nothing more than target practice for his experienced crews. The Admiral gave the order to fire. All 13 ships in the battle group opened up with their main plasma batteries. Beams of superheated energy lanced through space toward the mystery ship, enough firepower to crack a small moon in half. The weapons struck the vessel's shields and something incredible happened. The plasma beams simply disappeared. They did not bounce off or get absorbed by the shields. They vanished completely, as if they had never existed at all. The space around. The mystery ship remained calm and clear, without even a flicker of energy discharge. Dr. Lisa Warren watched her instruments in amazement as the readings made no sense. The plasma beams had definitely hit the ship, but somehow the energy had been redirected somewhere else entirely. It was like the vessel could open doorways in space itself, sending attacks to distant parts of the galaxy. The mystery ship's response was swift and terrible. A single weapon port opened on its forward hull, and a beam of brilliant blue light shot out toward the Imperial flagship. The beam was thin as a pencil but brighter than a star. It struck the Iron Fist directly in the center of its command section. What happened next defied everything anyone knew about space combat. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought did not explode. It did not break apart or catch fire. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, the Iron Fist was there, bristling with weapons and armor. The next moment, there was empty space where the ship had been. Admiral Corex, his crew of 8,000, and the most powerful warship in the Imperial fleet had been erased from reality in the blink of an eye. No debris field remained. No energy signature marked where the ship had died. It was as if the Iron Fist had never been built at all. The remaining Imperial ships scattered in panic. Captains who had served the Empire for decades abandoned their attack formations and ran for their lives. The mystery ship made no move to pursue them. It simply returned to its original position near the station and waited, as if nothing had happened. Captain Alex Turner watched the whole battle from his cargo ship and felt his hands shaking. In 30 years of flying through dangerous space, he had never seen anything like what just happened. The technology needed to erase a ship from existence was beyond anything in the known galaxy. The station's communication systems crackled to life as the mystery ship finally decided to speak. The voice that emerged was human, speaking in clear English that most aliens needed their translation computers to understand. The speaker sounded calm and confident, as if destroying the most powerful ship in the Imperial fleet was just a normal day's work. Captain Rick Bennett knew that voice would change everything. After 200 years of hiding, running, and pretending, to be extinct, humanity had returned to the galaxy, and they had returned with power that made the mighty Zephyrian Empire look like children playing with toy ships in a bathtub. The voice from the mystery ship filled every communication channel in the Omega-7 system. It spoke in perfect English, but translation programs quickly converted the words into hundreds of alien languages so everyone could understand the message that would shake the foundation of galactic civilization. Captain Nathan Cross identified himself as the commander of the Terran remnant fleet vessel Retribution. His voice was steady and calm, but carried an undertone of authority that made even veteran space captains stand at attention. He spoke like someone who had seen terrible things and made difficult decisions, but never lost sight of what was right. Nathan explained that humanity had not died out as everyone believed. When the Zephyrian Empire attacked Earth 200 years ago, some humans had escaped into the dark space beyond the galactic rim. They had spent 2 centuries building new worlds, developing new technologies, and preparing for the day when they would return to settle old debts. The revelation sent shockwaves through every alien species in the galaxy. The Empire had built their rule on the story of human extinction. They told everyone that humans were weak, primitive creatures who could not survive in the harsh reality of galactic politics. The existence of the Retribution proved that story was a lie. Engineer Samantha Price worked on a neutral freight hauler that was docked at Omega-7 when the transmission began. She had studied galactic history and knew about the human homeworld that was destroyed centuries ago. As she listened to Captain Cross speak, her instruments detected massive energy spikes from multiple points throughout the galaxy. The Retribution was not alone. Captain Cross continued his message, and his words carried the weight of 2 centuries of planning and preparation. He spoke about the other human ships that were already in position around major Imperial installations. The return was not the desperate gamble of a single vessel, but a coordinated operation that had been planned for generations. The human captain talked about the Zephyrian Empire's crimes against the galaxy. He listed the species that had been enslaved, the worlds that had been strip-mined until they were lifeless rocks, and the cultures that had been erased because they dared to resist imperial rule. Every alien listening knew these stories were true, but none had ever dared to speak them aloud. Dr. Patricia Hayes sat in her small office on a research station 3 systems away, tears streaming down her face as she listened to the transmission. She was a xenoarchaeologist who had spent her career secretly preserving human artifacts that the Empire had tried to destroy. Patricia had always believed that humans would return someday, but she never imagined they would come back with such overwhelming power. Nathan Cross explained that the humans had learned hard lessons during their exile. They discovered that running away only delayed the inevitable confrontation with evil. The Empire would never stop expanding, never stop destroying, never stop enslaving. Someone had to stand up and fight back, no matter the cost. The technology, that allowed the Retribution to erase the Imperial flagship was just the beginning. Captain Cross revealed that human scientists had spent 200 years developing weapons and defenses that made their old Earth technology look like stone knives and bearskins. They had learned to manipulate space and time itself, to step between dimensions, and to harness energies that most species could not even detect. Lieutenant Katie Marshall listened to the transmission while watching the Retribution through the station's main viewport. The ship had not moved since destroying the Imperial fleet, but now she could see that it was somehow different. The hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and patterns of light ran along its surface in ways that hurt her eyes to follow. Captain Cross made it clear that humanity had not returned for conquest. They did not want to build a new empire to replace the old one. The humans had returned to free the galaxy from Zephyrian rule and give every species the chance to determine their own fate. They offered partnership to those who wanted it and protection to those who needed it. The most shocking part of the message came near the end. Captain Cross announced that human ships were already moving against Imperial targets throughout the galaxy. The war to free the known worlds had begun, and it would be over within hours rather than years. The empire that had ruled for 3 centuries would fall before the next sunrise. Dr. Lisa Warren checked her instruments again and confirmed what Captain Cross was saying. Energy signatures matching the Retribution were appearing near every major Imperial installation. The humans had positioned their fleet with perfect precision, striking at the Empire's heart while avoiding civilian populations entirely. As the transmission ended, Captain Cross made one final promise. The humans would not repeat the Empire's mistakes. There would be no mass executions, no enslaved populations, and no worlds burned to ash. The coming victory would be swift and clean, leaving the galaxy free to build something better from the ruins of Imperial tyranny. The silence that followed the message was profound. Every alien species in the galaxy had just learned that the most powerful empire in known history was about to fall to a people they thought were extinct. The humans had returned not as refugees or survivors, but as liberators carrying weapons that could reshape reality itself. The systematic destruction of the Zephyrian Empire began exactly 1 hour after Captain Cross finished his transmission. Across the galaxy, human ships appeared from the void like ghosts materializing from darkness. They struck with precision that left military analysts speechless and civilian populations completely unharmed. Commander Kevin Foster worked as a strategic analyst for the Cosmic Council, a neutral organization that tried to maintain peace between different species. He watched the assault unfold through real-time reports from across the galaxy. In the first 30 minutes, every major Imperial military base in the core sectors had gone silent. The humans were not using brute force. They were surgically removing the Empire's ability to fight back. The Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime housed the largest military installation in the galaxy. Fortress Command was protected by energy, shields that could stop a meteor storm and weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. Supreme Overlord Vex watched from his throne room as human ships appeared in his planet's orbit without triggering a single defense sensor. The human vessel, Silent Thunder, commanded by Captain Tony Mitchell, led the assault on the Imperial Academy, where young officers learned to serve the Empire. Instead of destroying the massive training facility, Tony broadcast a message directly into the Academy's communication system. He told the cadets they were free to choose their own futures, rather than serve a regime built on oppression and genocide. Many of the young Zephyrians laid down their weapons immediately. They had grown up hearing stories about the terrible humans who threatened galactic peace, but the voice speaking to them was calm and reasonable. Captain Mitchell offered them safe passage to their home worlds or the chance to help build a better galaxy. Most chose freedom over the brutal loyalty the Empire demanded. The human ships moved through space using technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. They could appear and disappear at will, phase through solid matter, and strike targets from impossible angles. The Imperial fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see, track, or predict. Lieutenant Sarah Barnes coordinated rescue operations from her position aboard the human medical ship Mercy. While the human war fleet dismantled Imperial infrastructure, specialized teams evacuated enslaved populations and provided them with resources needed to rebuild their shattered civilizations. The humans had come prepared not just for war, but for the peace that would follow. On the mining world of Kepler 442, the human ship Dawnbreaker arrived just as Imperial guards were preparing to execute a group of rebel slaves. Captain Linda Chen used her ship's teleportation technology to transport the prisoners to safety before the guards could react. The mine's automated systems were reprogrammed to serve the workers instead of their Imperial masters. Supreme Overlord. Vex tried desperately to coordinate a defense of his empire, but his communication networks had been compromised by human computer viruses that seemed to think for themselves. Every order he gave was intercepted and redirected. His mighty fleet received false commands that sent them flying in circles, while human ships destroyed their bases and supply depots. The human assault on Fortress Command itself was a masterpiece of tactical precision. 3 human ships appeared inside the facility's shields using some kind of dimensional gateway technology. They disabled the fortress's weapons without killing a single person, then broadcast a surrender demand directly to the Supreme Overlord's throne room, Dr. Ashley. Kim served as humanity's chief diplomatic officer during the Liberation Campaign. She worked tirelessly to establish communication with every species that had suffered under Imperial rule. Ashley explained that the humans wanted to create a galactic confederation based on mutual respect and cooperation, not another empire, built on fear and domination. The speed of the Imperial collapse shocked even the humans themselves. They had expected the campaign to take weeks or months, but the Empire's vast military machine crumbled in hours. Centuries of ruling through fear had left the Zephyrians with no allies, no friends, and no one willing to fight for their cause when defeat became inevitable. Captain Eric Stone commanded the human ship Liberator during the assault on the Imperial prison world of Tartarus 7. The planet held over 2 million political prisoners from dozens of species, all guilty of nothing more than speaking out against Imperial rule. Eric's team used advanced medical technology to heal prisoners who had been tortured for decades, while his engineers disabled the planet's automated execution systems. The final Imperial stronghold fell when Supreme Overlord Vex himself surrendered from his throne room. The human ships had surrounded Zephyr Prime completely, but they made no move to bombard the planet. Instead, Captain Cross himself teleported directly into the throne room and offered Vex a choice: surrender peacefully and help rebuild the galaxy, or watch his entire species pay the price for 3 centuries of tyranny. Vex chose surrender. The Supreme Overlord, who had ruled the galaxy with absolute power for 40 years, knelt before a human captain and formally dissolved the Zephyrian Empire. The document he signed granted freedom to every enslaved species and established the framework for a new galactic government based on democratic principles. The war that everyone expected to last for years was over in 6 hours. The empire that had seemed unstoppable for 3 centuries vanished like smoke in a strong wind. Across the galaxy, alien species emerged from hiding to see a sky free from Imperial warships for the first time in living memory. The aftermath of the Empire's fall brought changes that swept across the galaxy like a tidal wave of hope. Captain Nathan Cross stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking out at a galaxy that was free for the first time in 3 centuries. The hardest part of their mission was just beginning, building something better from the ashes of Imperial tyranny. Dr. Ashley Kim worked 18-hour days establishing the new Galactic Federation. Her diplomatic teams visited every world that had been under Imperial control, offering membership in a government based on equality and mutual respect. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been enemies under Imperial rule now worked together to create a better future for their children. The transformation was remarkable to witness. On the industrial world of Gamma Centauri, former Imperial slave workers took control of the factories that had produced weapons for the Empire. With human technical assistance, they converted the war machine into manufacturing centers for medical equipment and agricultural tools. The same facilities that once built instruments of oppression now created devices that saved lives and fed the hungry. Engineer Carl Stevens led the technological revolution that followed the liberation. Human innovations in energy production, space travel, and planetary restoration were freely shared with every species that wanted them. The advanced fusion reactors that powered human ships were scaled down to provide clean energy for entire worlds. Transportation networks that had taken decades to build were completed in months using human construction techniques. The Zephyrians themselves presented the biggest challenge for the new Federation. Many had never known anything but Imperial hierarchy and struggled to adapt to a system based on cooperation rather than domination. Captain Cross made the controversial decision to offer full membership to any Zephyrian who renounced the Empire's ideology and committed to the Federation's principles of equality. Captain Tony Mitchell commanded the human ship Redemption, which was assigned to help former Imperial worlds transition to self-governance. His crew included both humans and reformed Zephyrians working side by side. Tony often said that watching former enemies become trusted friends was more satisfying than any military victory. The healing process extended to worlds that had been devastated by Imperial strip mining operations. Human terraforming technology could restore dead planets to life within a few years. On the world of Xerion Prime, forests grew where there had been nothing but poisoned wasteland. Rivers flowed again through valleys that had been reduced to toxic slag by Imperial mining machines. Lieutenant Sarah Barnes established medical centers on dozens of worlds using human technology that seemed like magic to most aliens. Diseases that had plagued entire species for millennia were cured with simple genetic therapy. Injuries that would have crippled people for life were healed completely within days. The humans shared their medical knowledge freely, asking for nothing in return except a commitment to use it wisely. The new Federation faced its first major test when a group of Imperial loyalists tried to retake the mining world of Titan Beta. They expected the human defenders to be caught off guard, but the liberation had been planned down to the smallest detail. Human ships appeared within minutes of the attack, and the Imperial remnant found themselves facing weapons they could not comprehend or counter. Captain Linda Chen negotiated the surrender of the Imperial loyalists without firing a shot. She offered them the same choice given to all Zephyrians: join the Federation and help build a better galaxy, or spend their lives in exile on a remote world where they could harm no one. Most chose to abandon their loyalty to the dead empire and embrace the promise of something better. The economic transformation was equally dramatic. The imperial system had been based on exploitation, with wealth flowing from conquered worlds to the Zephyrian core systems. The Federation established trade networks based on fair exchange and mutual benefit. Worlds that had been stripped bare under imperial rule became prosperous partners in galactic commerce. Dr. Patricia Hayes finally emerged from hiding to establish the Galactic Museum of Human Heritage. Her collection of preserved human artifacts became the foundation for a cultural center that celebrated humanity's return and honored the memory of Earth. Students from across the galaxy came to learn about the species that had sacrificed everything to free them from tyranny. The most powerful symbol of the new era was the transformation of Zephyr Prime itself. The planet that had been the heart of imperial oppression became the capital of the Galactic Federation. The massive fortress that had housed Supreme Overlord Vex was converted into a university where young beings from every species learned to work together for the common good. Captain Cross often walked through the halls of the former Imperial Palace, now serving as the Federation's main government building. Where once Zephyrian nobles had plotted the conquest of new worlds, representatives from hundreds of species now debated how to heal the wounds left by centuries of war and oppression. The galaxy would never be the same. Trade routes that had been monopolized by imperial corporations became highways for free commerce. Scientific knowledge that had been hoarded by imperial researchers was shared openly, leading to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Art and culture flourished as species rediscovered traditions that had been suppressed or banned under imperial rule. The human fleet remained ready to defend the new Federation, but their weapons were rarely needed. The example of the Empire's swift fall served as a powerful deterrent to anyone who might consider returning to the old ways of conquest and oppression. Most conflicts were resolved through negotiation and compromise rather than violence. As Captain Cross looked out at the stars from his ship's observation deck, he reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this moment. 200 years of exile had been painful, but they had given humanity the wisdom and strength needed to free the galaxy. The future stretched ahead, bright with promise, and for the first time in centuries, every species could face it without fear. 6 months after the Empire's fall, the real work of rebuilding began in earnest. Captain Nathan Cross had moved his headquarters to the former imperial capital, but he spent most of his time visiting worlds that needed help recovering from centuries of oppression. The human fleet had become a mobile construction force, bringing advanced technology and expertise to the galaxy's most damaged regions. The planet Koranis 7 had been strip-mined so severely that its atmosphere was toxic and its surface was nothing but bare rock. Engineer Carl Stevens landed there with a team of terraforming specialists and equipment that could reshape entire continents. Within the first month, they had neutralized the poisonous gases and begun seeding the planet with specially designed bacteria that would break down the metallic waste left by imperial mining operations. Dr. Ashley Kim established the Federation, Reconstruction Authority to coordinate relief efforts across thousands of worlds. Her biggest challenge was not the technical problems of rebuilding, but the psychological damage left by imperial rule. Many species had forgotten how to govern themselves after generations of being told what to do by Zephyrian overseers. On the agricultural world of Demeter 5, human agricultural specialists worked alongside local farmers to restore soil that had been depleted by imperial food production quotas. The humans brought seeds from plants that had grown on Earth before its destruction, genetically modified to thrive in alien soil. Within a growing season, fields that had been barren for decades were producing crops again. Captain Linda Chen commanded the human medical ship Healing Wind, which traveled from world to world, treating populations that had been denied proper health care under imperial rule. Many species suffered from genetic damage caused by exposure to industrial pollution or radiation from imperial weapons testing. Human medical technology could repair this damage at the cellular level, but it required careful treatment over many months. The former slave world of Terminus Prime presented unique challenges for the reconstruction effort. 3 different species had been forced to work in the same factories, speaking different languages and following different customs. Human mediators helped establish a planetary council where all 3 species had equal representation, creating the first truly integrated government in the planet's history. Lieutenant Sarah Barnes coordinated the establishment of new schools on worlds where education had been limited to imperial propaganda. Human teachers worked with local educators to develop curricula that celebrated each species' unique culture while preparing students for life in the integrated galactic community. Children who had never learned to read were soon writing poetry and solving mathematical equations. The technological challenges of reconstruction were enormous. Many worlds had infrastructure designed specifically to serve imperial needs, with transportation networks that moved resources off-planet and communication, systems that could be monitored by Zephyrian intelligence services. Human engineers redesigned these systems to serve local populations while maintaining connection to the broader galactic community. Captain Eric Stone led the effort to establish new trade routes between worlds that had been kept isolated under imperial rule. The Empire had deliberately prevented contact between different species to reduce the risk of organized resistance. Now, these same worlds were discovering they had much to offer each other in terms of resources, knowledge, and cultural exchange. The economic transformation required careful management to prevent chaos. Dr. Patricia Hayes worked with local leaders to establish new currencies and banking systems that could not be manipulated by outside powers. The imperial credit had been backed by military force and slave labor. The new Federation credit was based on actual production and fair trade agreements between independent worlds. Some worlds faced unique problems that required creative solutions. The ocean world of Aquatica had been used as a dumping ground for imperial industrial waste, poisoning the seas that were home to its native population. Human environmental specialists developed microscopic machines that could break down the pollutants while leaving the natural ecosystem intact. The planet Xerion Beta had been turned into a massive prison where political prisoners from across the galaxy were held in brutal conditions. Human psychologists worked with former prisoners to help them readjust to freedom, while engineers converted the prison facilities into housing and schools for the new communities that were forming on the planet. Captain Tony Mitchell specialized in helping former Imperial military personnel find new roles in the peaceful galaxy. Many Zephyrian soldiers had never known anything but war and conquest. Tony's team established training programs that taught these veterans how to use their skills for construction and protection rather than destruction and oppression. The cultural renaissance that followed the Empire's fall was perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the reconstruction. Species that had been forced to abandon their traditions under imperial rule began rediscovering their heritage. Ancient languages were revived, traditional art forms were practiced again, and religious ceremonies that had been banned for centuries were openly celebrated. The human approach to reconstruction emphasized sustainability and self-sufficiency. Rather than creating dependencies on human technology and expertise, the goal was to give each world the tools and knowledge it needed to thrive independently. Human advisors worked themselves out of jobs by training local people to take over their responsibilities. Federation survey teams discovered that many worlds held natural resources that the Empire had never bothered to exploit because they were not immediately profitable. These discoveries allowed formerly poor planets to become prosperous trading partners, contributing to the galactic economy while maintaining their independence and dignity. The success of the reconstruction effort created momentum for even more ambitious projects. Plans were developed for new colonies in previously unexplored regions of the galaxy, where species could build communities from scratch without the burden of imperial history. These frontier worlds became laboratories for testing new forms of government and social organization. As the first year of freedom drew to a close, the results spoke for themselves. Worlds that had been dying under imperial exploitation were now thriving centers of commerce and culture. Species that had been enemies under the Empire were now partners in building a better future. The galaxy was healing, and hope was replacing fear in the hearts of billions of beings. 2 years after the Empire's fall, Captain Nathan Cross received intelligence reports that worried him deeply. Small groups of Imperial loyalists were gathering in the dark spaces between star systems, and they were not alone. Ancient enemies that had hidden beyond the galactic rim during imperial rule were beginning to test the strength of the new Federation. The first sign of trouble came from the frontier world of Kepler 438, where a Federation survey team had gone missing while exploring ancient ruins. Captain Linda Chen took the medical ship Healing Wind to investigate, expecting to find survivors of an accident or equipment failure. What she found instead was evidence of technology that predated the Empire by thousands of years. Dr. Ashley. Kim analyzed the strange artifacts that Captain Chen brought back from Kepler 438. The technology was clearly alien, but it did not match any known species in the galactic database. The power sources were still active after millennia of abandonment, and the weapon system showed signs of recent use. Someone or something had been using the ancient facility as a base of operations. The missing survey team was found 3 weeks later on a mining station at the edge of Federation space. They had no memory of the past month and showed signs of exposure to unknown forms of radiation. Human medical scanners detected microscopic implants in their brains that appeared to be some kind of control device, but the technology was too advanced for Federation scientists to understand or remove safely. Engineer Carl Stevens led a team to investigate similar disappearances that were being reported throughout the Outer Rim territories. His analysis of the evidence suggested that multiple groups were operating in coordination, using technology that was in some ways even more advanced than human science. The implications were disturbing. The Federation might not be the most powerful force in the galaxy after all. Intelligence reports from the former Zephyrian Intelligence Service revealed that the Empire had been aware of these ancient threats, but had chosen to ignore them rather than risk a conflict they might not win. Imperial policy had been to avoid the Outer Rim regions where the old ruins were located, hoping that distance would provide protection from whatever lurked in the darkness. Captain Eric Stone commanded the reconnaissance ship Silent Hunter, which was tasked with mapping the locations of ancient installations throughout the galaxy. His crew discovered dozens of sites where evidence suggested that advanced civilizations had once thrived before vanishing without explanation. Many of these locations showed signs of recent activity by unknown parties. The Federation Council met in emergency session to discuss the growing threat. Representatives from dozens of species shared similar stories of missing ships, strange signals from empty space, and encounters with vessels that used technology beyond current understanding. It became clear that the fall of the Empire had created a power vacuum that was being filled by forces that had remained hidden for millennia. Lieutenant Sarah Barnes analyzed the patterns of disappearances and discovered something alarming. The missing ships and personnel were not being taken randomly. Someone was specifically targeting Federation scientists, engineers, and military personnel who had knowledge of human technology. It appeared that the unknown enemies were trying to learn about the weapons and defenses that had defeated the Empire so easily. Dr. Patricia Hayes uncovered references to these ancient threats in human historical records that had been preserved during the exodus from Earth. The document spoke of a war fought in the distant past between humanity's ancestors and beings from outside normal space-time. The war had ended with the enemies being driven into dimensional exile, but the records warned that they would eventually return seeking revenge. The first direct contact with the hidden enemies came when the Federation colony ship New Horizon was attacked while establishing a settlement on the planet Aurora 7. The attacking vessels appeared from nowhere using some form of stealth technology that was completely invisible to Federation sensors. Their weapons passed through defensive shields as if they did not exist, but the ships themselves seemed partially transparent and constantly shifting. Captain Tony Mitchell led the rescue mission to Aurora 7 aboard the warship Defender. His crew found the colony ship disabled but intact, with the colonists in a state of suspended animation caused by exposure to unknown energy fields. The attackers had taken detailed scans of the ship's technology, but had left the humans alive, suggesting they were more interested in information than conquest. The revelation that came from analyzing the attack changed everything the Federation thought it knew about galactic history. The energy signatures from the enemy weapons matched readings from the ancient ruins, confirming that the same species responsible for the disappearances had once ruled vast portions of the galaxy before being defeated and driven into hiding. Human. Scientists working with Federation researchers made a breakthrough in understanding the enemy technology. The attackers existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that could only be accessed through advanced manipulation of space-time. This explained why conventional weapons and defenses were ineffective against them and why they could appear and disappear at will. Captain Nathan Cross realized that the Federation faced a threat unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. These ancient enemies had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology and planning their return. They had waited until the Empire fell and the galaxy was vulnerable before beginning their campaign to reclaim what they considered to be their rightful territory. The Federation military began an urgent program to develop new weapons and defenses capable of fighting enemies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human scientists shared their most advanced research with allies throughout the galaxy, recognizing that this threat could only be defeated through complete cooperation between all free species. The ancient enemies made their intentions clear when they broadcast a message to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Speaking in a language that translation computers could barely process, they claimed to be the original rulers of this region of space. They demanded the immediate withdrawal of all younger species to primitive worlds where they would be allowed to exist as servants to their ancient masters. The message ended with a demonstration of power that left no doubt about the seriousness of the threat. 3 Federation outposts on the galactic rim simply vanished, not destroyed but erased from reality as completely as if they had never existed. The technology that had made human weapons so effective against the Empire was primitive compared to what these ancient beings could do. As reports of attacks and disappearances increased throughout the outer territories, Captain Cross called for an emergency meeting of all Federation leaders. The galaxy that had just been freed from Imperial tyranny now faced an enemy that could make the Zephyrian Empire look like children playing with toys. The real test of human leadership and Federation unity was about to begin. The war against the ancient enemies lasted 3 years and pushed human technology to its absolute limits. Captain Nathan Cross coordinated the Federation's defense from a massive space station built in the ruins of the old Imperial capital. The station housed scientists and military personnel from every member species, all working together to develop weapons that could fight beings who existed in multiple dimensions at once. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia. Hayes discovered references in ancient human texts to a technique called dimensional anchoring, which could force multidimensional beings into normal space where conventional weapons could affect them. The technology had been theoretical when Earth was destroyed, but 2 centuries of advancement in human science made it possible to build working anchor generators. Engineer Carl Stevens led the crash program to develop and deploy the new weapons. The dimensional anchors required enormous amounts of energy and had to be precisely calibrated for each type of enemy encountered. Worse, the anchors only worked for short periods before the ancient beings adapted their technology to escape the dimensional locks. The first major victory came during the Battle of Centauri Station, where Captain Linda Chen commanded a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels equipped with the new anchor technology. When the ancient enemies attacked using their standard hit-and-run tactics, the Federation ships activated their anchors and trapped the attackers in normal space long enough to destroy them with concentrated firepower. The victory at Centauri proved that the ancient enemies could be defeated, but it also revealed the true scope of the threat. Captured enemy technology showed that hundreds of thousands of their ships were hidden in dimensional pockets throughout the galaxy. The war would not be won by a few tactical victories, but would require a sustained campaign to hunt down and destroy every enemy stronghold. Lieutenant Sarah Barnes developed new medical protocols for treating personnel who had been exposed to dimensional weapons. The enemy's energy fields could cause terrible damage to living tissue, creating wounds that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Standard medical equipment was useless against such injuries, requiring entirely new healing techniques based on dimensional manipulation. The Federation's greatest advantage was the diversity of its member species. Each alien race contributed unique perspectives and technologies that human scientists could incorporate into new weapons and defenses. The collective knowledge of dozens of civilizations proved more powerful than the ancient enemies had expected when they began their campaign. of conquest. Captain Eric Stone led deep strike missions into enemy territory using ships equipped with experimental dimensional drives. These raids were incredibly dangerous because the ships had to enter the same twisted space where the ancient enemies lived. Many vessels never returned, but the intelligence gathered from successful missions allowed Federation forces to target the most important enemy installations. The turning point came when Federation scientists discovered that the ancient enemies had a fatal weakness. Their dimensional technology required massive computing systems that existed partially in normal space to maintain the complex calculations needed for multidimensional travel. These computers were heavily defended, but could be destroyed by coordinated attacks using dimensional anchors and conventional weapons. Dr. Ashley Kim negotiated a temporary alliance with several neutral species that had remained isolated during both the Imperial period and the Federation's formation. These ancient civilizations possessed knowledge about the dimensional enemies that proved crucial for developing more effective weapons and defensive strategies. The final campaign began with simultaneous attacks on 12 major enemy strongholds scattered throughout the galaxy. Captain Nathan Cross personally led the assault on the primary enemy base, hidden in a dimensional pocket near the galactic core. The battle lasted for 18 hours as Federation forces fought their way through layers of defenses that bent the laws of physics. Captain Tony Mitchell commanded the reserve fleet that moved from battle to battle, reinforcing Federation forces wherever the fighting was most intense. His ships were equipped with the latest dimensional anchor technology, capable of trapping even the most advanced enemy vessels long enough for the main battle fleet to destroy them. The ancient enemy's final defeat came not through superior firepower, but through superior strategy. Human tacticians realized that the enemy's greatest strength, their ability to exist in multiple dimensions, was also their greatest weakness. By attacking simultaneously in normal space and multiple dimensional layers, Federation forces could prevent the enemies from escaping to their hidden strongholds. The last enemy stronghold fell when engineer Carl Stevens successfully activated a massive dimensional anchor that covered an entire star system. Trapped in normal space with nowhere to run, the remaining enemy fleet was systematically destroyed by Federation forces. The ancient threat that had lurked in the shadows for millennia was finally eliminated. The aftermath of the war brought changes that were even more profound than the fall of the Empire. The Federation had proven that cooperation between different species could overcome any threat, no matter how ancient or powerful. The technologies developed during the war opened up new possibilities for exploration and colonization in dimensions beyond normal space. Captain Linda Chen led the first expedition to explore the dimensional pockets where the ancient enemies had hidden their civilizations. The ruins found there contained technologies and knowledge that would benefit the galaxy for generations to come. Most importantly, the expedition confirmed that all traces of the ancient threat had been eliminated. The war's end was marked by a celebration that lasted for weeks across every Federation world. Species that had fought side by side against the dimensional enemies formed bonds that would last for centuries. The galaxy was not just free from tyranny, it was united in a way that had never been possible before. Dr. Patricia Hayes established a new museum dedicated to preserving the memory of the dimensional war and honoring the sacrifices made by all Federation species. The museum's central exhibit was a functioning dimensional anchor kept active as a reminder that vigilance was the price of freedom in a universe full of unknown threats. Captain Nathan Cross stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at stars that were finally safe for all the species that called them home. The journey from humanity's exile to galactic liberation had taken over 2 centuries, but it had resulted in something greater than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy was free, united, and ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The Federation's victory over the ancient enemies marked the beginning of a new age of exploration and discovery. With dimensional technology now understood and controlled, the galaxy could expand beyond its previous boundaries. New worlds, new species, and new possibilities waited among the stars, all protected by the unity and strength that had been forged in the fires of war.